Line unmuted.
Right, 6 o'clock, we'll go ahead and get started. Everyone, join Commissioner Dix, please, sir.
Father in heaven, we come one more time to thank you and say, bless your name. Lord, we come right now with heavy hearts, inhabitants of this world and this country, this county and this state, this city. Father, we bless your name because your name worthy to be blessed again. Father, we ask you to bless those and comfort those that stand in need of comfort right now. Pray for the wars that go on and the rumors of wars. We pray for our home front. Pray for those that was hurt. We pray for those families to be comforted, Father, for you know that you are God and that God that will do right. Then we pray for this council that we will do the right thing, and you know what is right. Father, we all feel what is right, and we thank you for what you're going to do and how you're going to guide us now. Help us is what we ask you to do, and we bless your name. In Jesus Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone to our meeting this Tuesday, December the 19th, 2023, 6 p.m. We have a conference line set up. The number there is 1-917-900-1022. The access code is 32347#. This is not a toll-free number, and you may be subject to long-distance charges according to your long-distance plan. When the chairperson opens the meeting for public comment, please follow the below instructions. If you wish to speak, please dial *5. The moderator will unmute your line once your turn to speak and notify you by announcing the last 4 digits of your telephone number. Please announce your name and address, and you will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes. Any person wishing to address the board regarding an agenda item will be given 3 minutes for comment. A commenter may only speak one time for each agenda item. That said, we will move to item number 3, approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
A motion and a second to approve our agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Consent items, our approval of the invoices. Everyone had a chance to go over your invoices. Any discussion? We got a motion to approve our consent. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor? Bids, public hearing. Number 5, the board to receive bids for the San Pedro Bay Road retaining wall.
So I believe we received a single bid on this. Gary will read that.
Yeah, we got one bid from Anderson, Columbia, out of Lake City. The bid from Anderson, Columbia Company is $1,174,963.
Say that again?
$1,174,963.
Okay, so I'm going to suggest that that is well beyond the engineer estimate on this. That it's probably not in our best interest without understanding what may or may not have been included in the bid tab relative to what the quantities were on the plans. So you can have a bid review committee of myself and Hank, but I wouldn't recommend that the board move forward with just this bid, based on how much of a difference there is between it and the engineer's estimate, as there was last year's. Is that all right? We had quite a bit of questioning and inquiry from 2 other companies. Obviously, I'm not out to get rid of one just for the hopes of trying to get some more. But we really need to understand, is there a glaringly obvious omission or inclusion, either way? Connor, you may can help me on this. If we were to accept the bid, figure out the specifics of what is in it, and there was an opportunity to do a value adjustment for something that's in there, or they just say, hey, you just missed this completely, or the price is what the price is. I don't want to throw this out completely when you have an opportunity to work with a legitimate bid, but
only
I
got
can't
one.
award it.
You only got one bid, so you could, get on with it and go over it with them. Instead of rejecting it, just go over it with them, see if you can, find out why it's so high or negotiate it down.
So is there a mechanism if I did that to, let's say we did find something that was beyond the intended scope as designed? Is there a way to get to a point to where you can legitimately award it for an amount less than what they did?
Yes, you can, because you only got one bid.
Okay.
If there were other competing bidders, I wouldn't be answering it that way.
Yes, sir. Okay, so what I would suggest then is put myself, put the county administrator, put Public Works on the bid review committee. And we will look at they probably don't have a bid tabulation, but we'll request one that is representative of their bid amount. And then I'll sit down with the engineer of record and kind of go through it and see where the differences are. And then if it's with a substantial comfort level that we feel we can adjust to get things to where it needs to be, we'll come back at a subsequent meeting to recommend award. If we can't, we'll come back and tell you that we couldn't. And then we'll figure out what to do at that point, if you want to re-advertise or revise.
Mr. Chair, so are you saying that basically we table this and y'all look at it and then come back, or you want us to?
It's not so much as a tabling as you've received bids and you've declared them publicly. You've appointed a bid review committee. We're going to go back and study the bid. We'll evaluate that, and then we'll return back with a recommendation at a subsequent date.
So what do we need to do tonight? Nothing?
I don't think you'll do anything other than just receive the bids. I mean,
Just
it's not-
receive the bid and understand what, Mr. Dudley is telling you, and you can tell him to do it.
I understand what he's saying, I just didn't know procedurally what we need to do
We're not-
tonight.
We've only got
a bid tonight, we're just accepting the bid as given, and understanding that Mr. Dudley and the, bid committee is gonna review it and review with the engineer.
Yeah, you're physically receiving a bid tonight. You're not awarding a bid.
We're not,
But we don't need to make a motion then.
I
Okay,
don't
that's what I was getting.
yeah, you don't need to.
Basically, you're saying if you can't work out a deal with them to lower the price in the specs that you need, we can do away with it, not do it, is what you're saying?
No, sir. What I would say is that we would either revise our scope. We would come back to you guys and say, look, this is what we found. This is where we tried to get to. We were either successful or unsuccessful. Our recommendation for you is we can revise the plan and the scope of work, re-advertise, and try to get some bids back in. Or, obviously, you have the opportunity to change paths at that point.
In other words, we will have an opportunity to pass it.
Of course.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think the issue is that we're gonna have to do something. you know, considering what we've heard in terms of public safety and all of that, but.
But double the price of what we kind of originally, thought it was gonna be.
Yeah, and I looked at it just before it came down.
Double.
Yeah, it was up.
Better.
I know it was.
That's what those red flags to me. You know, I wanna make sure that we couldn't afford it, we wouldn't do it.
And that's all I'm asking, is let us understand why it is, and make sure that it's something that maybe it's legitimate, maybe it's an oversight, maybe it's something that, just a miscommunication. And I'll return back and tell you what we found out before we act.
Okay.
Sounds
Thank you.
good.
All right, so you're gonna come back to us?
Yes, sir. I
With
don't
a
know
yeah
if
and nay.
I don't know if that's gonna be, you know, the first one in January or not, but just giving some people schedules.
Okay.
Anderson generally doesn't work that week, a week or two around Christmas and New Year's. So they may not be in the office to be able to give you some information.
Thank you, sir. All right. The board to further discuss redistricting in Taylor County. Now, I understand Mr. Dudley has, made some changes and submitted, so if you want to go forward with the changes and.
I have, what you guys are seeing, on your packets. And let's see, did you guys get one of these? Okay. So what I am giving out to the school board members right now and the superintendent is just a summary of the map that we revised after the workshop to reflect some of the comments and concerns that were made. And
Yeah, we might see those maps too.
yeah, I have a few. I will go through all of this on the screen for the general public.
We just received this now.
Actually, we gave that map to you on the 14th.
Yes, we just received it.
I just gave you the hand paper, it said not.
Okay,
thank you.
But you, like I said, you had the map, for 5 days or so now. Anyway, so what you're seeing on the screen.
Wait, Kim. People are concerned about that, they don't have what they need.
I have one more, somebody needs one?
Just come in about there.
This one? Okay, so what you are seeing on the screen is, as I stated, this is the district map that we are proposing to the Board of County Commissioners. After the comments and concerns and questions that were fielded during the workshop earlier this month, we tried to make adjustments where needed. And then, fortunately for us, ACLU was generous enough to provide a technical memorandum subsequent to that meeting that kind of laid out the criteria on how you go about determining whether a district boundary is appropriate or inappropriate. So we used that information and tried to kind of vet what we had done, just to make sure that the proposal that we're bringing for you today is what we feel is a representative of the requirements that we have in front of us. If you look on the second sheet of that, and basically all I did was I kind of zoomed in to the city limit area, or at least a portion of the city limit area, so that you could see where we are proposing the District 5 boundary to be relative to that location. What we wound up doing was kind of moving that a little bit further north. I wound up going all the way to Ash Street on the west side. And then on the east side, I moved that all the way up to Main Street. All of District 5 still remains west of Jefferson Street. So as I made reference, the ACLU was generous in providing a memorandum that kind of explained the Voting Rights Act and the obligation of that act and our obligation as the stewards of Taylor County to make sure that you are compliant with that. So they tell you in here, excuse me, make this a little darker so you can see it. And you can see this was a memorandum from Mr. Warren. He's a staff attorney with ACLU, he's sitting here to my left. He participated in that workshop that we had just the other day as well. And as you can see in that first line, he is giving you what he believes is the obligations and the specifics of how you comply with the Voting Rights Act. If we look down to what is the Voting Rights Act, we see that it is intended to protect the racial minority groups, quote unquote, potential to elect a representative of its own choice in a single member district, which, as you all know, all of our districts are single member districts. We don't have at-large anymore. And then he goes a little further and provides what that definition is inferred, is the ability to elect. You determine that by, they do an analysis of the electorate or the voter behavior within a particular district. Obviously, everything that we'll be speaking about today is in reference to District 5. There hasn't been any questions or concerns relative to the remaining 4 districts, outside of knowing that we have an obligation to make sure that our populations are equally balanced sufficiently to where we don't have a deviation from the average more than 10%, which we don't. So what you see is that they compare the behavior in a particular election district, District 5, to determine whether a minority percentage population will satisfy the Voting Rights Act standard. What they compare is the voter turnout and the turnout rates in, they're telling you it's particularly relevant. That is hard to say. So they did an analysis which they tried to get a relatively high degree of confidence to determine what proportion of single race white, single race black voters needed to be in a particular district in order to have that assurance that the candidate of their choice would be successful in that district. After doing their analysis, you can see on the next page that they determined that this effectiveness number, that they know that the black voter per population, or that black voter percentage needs to be at least 47 to 48%. In achieving that, they have that, as I stated before, that high degree of confidence that the minority population has the ability, quote unquote, to elect a candidate of their choice. So they're telling you here that in order to figure out how you get to that 47 to 48%, is we try to take all the registered voters throughout the entire county. And again, I'll have to say thank you to the ACLU. In order to make sure that we weren't at odds of trying to say, well, your data says something different than my data, we actually use the ACLU data. And when I say data, it is the geo-reference, which just means there's a dot that represents every voter in Taylor County positioned at their residence or on their property is how it actually turns out. So what that does is it enables you to come up with statistics. And those statistics can be based on this district, that district, the whole county. It tells you whether someone is registered to vote. It tells you whether someone was active in a particular election, whether that be a primary or a general election. And then beyond that, it also gives you information with respect to race, of course. So once you have that data geospatially oriented through there, that's when you start doing your analysis. So what we did was we followed the same methodology. I used the voter turnout, the voter data provided by ACLU. I've overlaid it on our county boundaries, our redistrict county boundaries, and then started drilling down to look at the county as a whole to determine how much voter participation was there in elections, as well as how much voter participation based on race there was in an individual district. And once I did that, we come up with the results. These results are going to show you that on the top left is that, remember I made mention to that deviation from average? We have to stay within that 10% threshold. And as we have those percentages there, this population distribution on that top left of the District 2020 census, the district population based on the 2020 census population, you see that our deviation from average is at a 9.3%, which is less than that 10, which legally equates to a de minimis difference. Continuing along on that, you see on the right side, we took that data, and there are indicators in that data on whether someone was an active voter, an inactive voter, or there's actually one removed voter in there. So we distribute that by district based on whether they are single race white, single race black, or all others. And the objective, as we saw before, was in the memo, is that we want to make sure we're hitting those thresholds, but trying to achieve a majority, if we can, of single race black voters. And as you can see, in the District 5 that we have proposed, we are at a 50% of registered black voters versus a 47% registered white voters in District 5. Now, remember I also told you that one of the concerns or one of the constraints that they looked at was what is the voter participation. So in the memo, and if you don't mind, if I can grab this order. The memo makes reference to 3 different elections. That was the 18, the 20, and the 2022. The data that we received from the ACLU included the 2020 and the 2022, both the primary and the general elections. So there was 4 sets of data there that we could compare. And to start thinking about it, and if you actually consider it, if we're analyzing the ability to elect, so quote unquote, to preserve or ensure the Voting Rights Act has been complied with, then we need to do that at the district in which the district is actually participating. So if you were to look at the 2018 and the 2022 elections, you guys live this stuff, so you all know this better than I do. The school board members know this better than I do. But what you will realize is that District 5 doesn't participate at a district level in the 2022 nor the 2018 elections. They actually only participate in the 2020 election, which is what we're about to come up with, the 4-year cycle. So what you're going to see in 2024 is you will actually see a District 5 participation. So that's the election we chose to focus on, because what we're trying to do is ensure that there is an ability to elect of a population percentage distribution to ensure that minority black voters have an opportunity to elect a candidate of their choice, realizing that candidates of their choice at the local level are only determined at a district election. Everything else, constitutional, state, congressional, or national, is all determined at higher levels, whether that be the county as a whole, where it's irrelevant where you live, or within a congressional district where it's multiple counties, or at a national level where it's the whole nation. So the only relevant data that we would tell you that is pertinent to the discussion when determining whether or not District 5 voters have an opportunity to elect their candidate of choice is the 2020 election. So what I did is I went through and I compared, using the district boundaries that we are proposing. You see the voters that participated in the 2020 primary election. Then they are further broken down by race, which is white, black, and then all other. And as you can see in the configuration that we are proposing, is that the black percentage was 50%. The white percentage of voters in that election were 48%. Continuing along that same line, if we look at the 2020 general election, we show it voter turnout. That voter turnout increased to 9,900 from only 6,000. So there was a lot more participation. And even in this election, you see that the black percentage is at a 50% still. And then the white participation dropped actually to a 47%. So right now, we have met the obligation for our minimum deviation from average of 10%. We have a majority black registered voters, and we have participation levels that are representative of that 47 to 48, which we've actually exceeded by providing 50% in the election in which a District 5 race is determined at the local level. So we feel like we've provided everything that the memorandum was geared towards to ensure compliance with the Voters' Rights Act. And I will tell you that if you were to look at these ballots, just to be sure of what I'm telling you, this is the ballot from August of 2020, where you can see that the local level races are the ones that I'm referring to would be obviously my audience as a county commission. The school board follows the same district lines. The city has different ones. But you can see that there was a District 1 race, a District 3 race, and a District 5 race. If we continue on and look at the this is the primary election of 2022. And I tell you this 2022 because in the proposals, and I'm assuming Mr. Warren will probably get up and present his proposal to you. They provided us a few alternates after the workshop, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, each of you guys, and as well as you guys, probably received that same email where there was like 3 different alternatives there. The table that demonstrated the appropriateness of those all was based on the 2022 election. This is the ballot from the 2022 election, and as you can see, there is only a District 2 and a District 4, so I would suggest to you that I believe the 2020 has a little bit more direct relevance if we're determining the appropriateness of the percentage of population in District 5. That's it. So, I am happy to go into specifics. I have the GIS available if you were wanting to drill down to do anything else. Other than that, I will open it to questions or comments or concerns.
So, does that include, in your, diagram here, does that include the Commissioner Siegel had, that includes that block at the top that you mentioned?
Yes, sir.
Can you speak up, please, so we can hear? And just so, I understand the map as far as the changes and where the changes are.
This is that block right there you're talking about.
Yeah, so, I understand the changes down here on
the city.
around the city in District 5 and 1. I just, Commissioner Dent, did you understand those changes there?
No, sir, I didn't understand all
Do you
of it.
want to maybe dial into where's the?
Not a problem.
Everybody understand?
Yes, sir, let me,
Speaking to the mic, please.
Okay, so this is our district map that we are proposing. And just to start at the top, make things a little bit easier. As you recall, when we first talked about this, the district line only went over to Raymond Sheffield. There was a request made that we move that line a little further east over to Earl Glen. So we did make that change. The population numbers, the voter numbers, all of that reflects the boundaries as you see them on this map today, and the boundaries that you see in front of you. So if we continue down. Maybe it's a little faster. Then the other change that was made was with respect to here, is that I needed to add a little bit more population. So we took and moved from, we were at the creek line before, and we moved that up to Main Street to include these census blocks here. And when I say census blocks, that's all these little blue squares that are there.
19 to Jefferson Street, Commissioner Dent.
Yeah, well,
Yes,
what
sir.
about Lofty Park?
Lothridge Park is still included. It is right here. And what I did, I learned from my mistake, and I will show you that. Do something here for you, and I will physically show you where it's at. Will you type 60, please? So you can see Lothridge Park right there in District 5.
Right, and that's Richard Bell. All that was included
Yes, sir.
in the new.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I got that.
Yeah, keep going, there's more.
Okay, let me go ahead and turn this off a little bit. It just makes things work a little better.
So you cross 19.
I do cross 19. I go all the way over to Jefferson Street. We were doing that up to the creek level before, Spring Creek. We expanded that up to Main Street to kind of better do some percentages there. And then we kept that same eastern boundary as Jefferson Street, and that carries all the way down to Puckett Road. All right, and then I think the other change, I can't remember this, there's been so many versions, I can't remember if I
But I didn't
lit the District 3 or something like that, sir.
Has that been bummed enough too?
Yeah.
I might have been bummed with all these maps.
Well, and that's one thing about it, and, you know, and just, obviously, I'm an engineer, so I deal with numbers all the time, but it is very iterative. It's an iterative process. So there are many criteria, you have these criteria that the ACLU, was nice enough to provide in that memorandum. You have to balance percentages, but you have other criteria that you have to be working with as well. So you can't just take and grab a population and put them over here, because there's 3 different things you gotta be looking at every time you do that. So it takes a lot of effort, and, obviously we would love it to be just press a button and it all works, but it's not quite that way.
Yeah.
Is there anything else?
Yeah, let me tell you what. Let me tell you this. Members with the Littman lawsuit developing out the 4 remaining members. They said when they, through those districts, it was 59% black registered voters and 40% white.
Yes, sir.
Today, it's 48% registered voters, black. Is that right?
No, sir, I'm proposing it to be 50.
Okay, what I'm saying, it was 59 then. You look at it now, it's 50%.
And what I would,
What's on?
I apologize.
When you look at the other districts, every one of them is 90, 95. Why ours couldn't be higher than 50 if the rest of them is 90?
It was 9% white, right, in the other districts. That's right. And it's, part of it stems from, let me see if I can catch it here.
So you tell me there's no way you can put a bigger percentage on black voters in District 5?
Kenneth?
Hold on, let me finish. What I will say is, the ACLU proposals that are in front of you, the 3 that have already been provided, the maximum percent of black voters in any of those proposals is 49%. We've actually provided 50%, sir. So I've gone beyond that, but I want to tell you a little bit why.
Not of registered voters,
Excuse me?
of registered voters, no.
Am I missing something here? Because it says 49%, 48% black and 49% white on every 3 of the proposals.
That's 2022.
That's correct, that's what you offered.
So I'm just saying apples to apples. Commissioner Deb's talking about registered voters. We're talking about registered voters.
Yeah, no, Joe, so that's fine, and I don't think. So you can have that, District 5, so you're 55% registered voters is what he has. But he's telling you in the memorandum, you can't just look at that. You have to look at their participation in the election, which is exactly what we did. We achieved a 50% registered voters, and we achieved a 50% voter turnout in District 5. So I'm not sure what we have done relative to the objective, but I will tell you that things are difficult when you get to where you're trying to have a population that is kind of equally distributed. When in Taylor County, 26% are non-white, 74% are white. So it makes it tough to aggregate those because the districts themselves are supposed to be contiguous and not breaking at corners just to catch this little bulb and this little bulb. They're supposed to be contiguous. So that's what we have tried to do. And I believe we have met the obligations, the legal obligations. I've also believed that we have met the stated ACLU objectives of preserving the Voters' Right Act for District 5 as we've proposed it.
But then the people that I talked to that filed a lawsuit,
Yes, sir.
they are not really satisfied with 50%. When it was 59% to start with, now you're taking that from them, or people lose. What I'm saying, if the rest of them is 90, 89, and 90%, why can't that be a greater 50% in District 5? That's the only question I want answered. You can't do it. Maybe the federal judge can, and that's what they will do if it's not more than 50%.
I think what you're going to wind up getting is that we right now have found that the effectiveness number is, pursuant to the ACLU, is between 47 and 48% voter turnout. Not just who's registered, but the ones that actually go to the poll. Because you can be registered and sit at the house and you're not going to get your candidate unless you go to the poll. So what we have done is we've provided a district boundary that actually provides 50% voter turnout in a relevant election.
And that's referring to some of these numbers that maybe ACLU has based off of 2018 and 2022 elections.
They based them off of 2020. Excuse me, I apologize. 2022.
I don't run on that cycle. Your district don't run on that
No,
cycle.
they don't.
You run on
From 20, from 16 to 20.
and then 24.
Yeah.
What Kenneth has proposed is your district has, and it's always gonna be a presidential election.
Yeah.
So that's where.
You have your highest turnout.
That's where you're gonna have, well, you look at that number in 2020, in 2018, it was, what, went from,
Got 600 extra.
well, it was several more than that. That was, 6,000 to,
We went from 6,000 to 9,900.
9,900 voters in 2020.
That's just the primary and the general.
That's right.
But if you look at the 2022 election, which is what the ACLU used in their determination, is that those voter turnouts was like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's like 7,500 is whatever it's called. So we're actually using the relevant one, and I think you're seeing relevant turnout because, one, you have all of these local elections, plus you wind up having the national presidential election on that same election. So that's where you're seeing a lot of people turn out, more people turning out. Let's make sure that we have a percentage that meets our minimum threshold. We've actually exceeded that by 2%.
So, with the 50% turnout, you said there's 55% more registered voters, 55% of registered voters in District 5 only. 50% of those turn out to vote. Is that what you said?
Let's see if I can answer your question. So this is, I'll just pick the C just because it's on the bottom. Or I'll use the 55 because that's the number you're remembering. Is you're seeing registered voters for the ACLU version. This one just happens to be B. He's showing you that there was 1,357 black registered voters in that District 5 orientation. Of that 1,300, he is showing that 48% actually voted in the 2022 election. So you're not seeing that 55%. You're only seeing 49% of your, of the ones that voted in District 5 were black voters. And what I'm telling you is the boundary that we proposed for a relevant election is at 50%.
Okay, I'll give somebody else.
Yes, sir. Okay.
I have a question about that.
The effectiveness number at the proposed rate is 50%.
No, the effectiveness number, actually, if we're referring to that technical memorandum, is actually 47 to 48%.
Which is what the.
And I've exceeded that by 2. Yes, sir.
And look,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairperson, but I think correct me if I'm wrong, in your 3 versions, your number does not go higher than 55%
For,
for registered voters?
Just for registered voters.
Right, for 55%, right. So the highest, right, and
And voter participation doesn't go above 48%.
8 or 40, yeah, 48.
well, for 2022.
Yes, sir.
Can you turn on the precinct layers in that map?
Ma'am?
Can you turn on the precincts in that map?
Yes, ma'am.
And Nick, help me.
These are the original precincts, so they're not changed.
Okay, so I think what I understand Commissioner Debs is asking is to get that, if the percentage could go up, then I think the concern is the numbers of all, in the entire district would have to go down, and then we would be out of compliance as far as that deviation, right?
So there would obviously have to be an exchange of population between, you're taking folks out of District 5, you'll need to add folks somewhere else, and then there'll be a movement.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I
Let
think
me
that's
just-
why we're struggling with we can't get above the 55%.
Let me just show you graphically
Okay.
what I think we just know inherently from messing with the data so much. So this top layer here, this is the voter file that was provided to us. It's a representation of, did they participate in 2020, 2022, and then were they registered to vote? What is their voter ID number? All of these little dots represent the distribution of people that are registered to vote in Taylor County. And what we can do is I can show you is if we select this by attributes, is that I'm going to create a selection here that shows, let me get rid of this. Can you hit delete one, please? And we're going to say race equal, and I'm just going to pick 3. You agree that's the correct number? This is representing a black individual versus the other races. And this is a new selection set. So what you're seeing is these highlighted dots. As soon as it, that's the distribution. You're trying to get to that 100%. That's that distribution. You're not going to get there when you have that dispersion of the population. So what you do is you try, and that's what they recognize, is that there is a magic theoretical number that you need to get to ensure that the voters within that district have a reasonable opportunity to elect their candidate of choice. They're telling you that you're looking for that voter turnout of 48%, 47 to 48%. So if we have achieved a district delineation that provides at least that 47 to 48% of that single race black, then theoretically we have provided that opportunity for those voters to pick their candidate at the next election. And I know you want to hear from somebody else.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
May I ask a quick question?
Go ahead. Jay, it's
This
okay?
map that Mr. Dudley just presented on, was this map, sent before or after the email that you guys sent? Was this map sent before the email that we received from ACLU on the 15th?
this map we see here, was it before we see this?
Yes, I prepared it on the 14th.
Okay, so this is before they sent us the map that they sent us on the 15th.
It was sent to the county administrator on the 14th, yes, the
Okay.
day before. When we received the information from the ACLU, and it defined the different thresholds that you need to achieve, then we tested the boundary that we have against those measures. And that's what I presented today.
But it was done after the meeting last week when.
Yes, after the workshop and the comments and questions and concerns, we made the adjustments to make sure that the percentages, the racial percentages were correct in District 5.
Mr. Warren, after you reviewed this map, does it comply with the ACLU guidelines?
So I'd add a little bit of nuance. So
Can
the-
you stand up? so
Yeah, sorry. So I'll add a little bit of a gloss onto everything Mr. Dudley said. Obviously, District 5 is elected in presidential years. The last one was 2020. The most recent election was 2022. My God. Those two electorates look pretty different, obviously. You can just see it in the numbers of just the total number of people who turned out. You know, ordinarily, fewer people vote in gubernatorial years, but it was even worse last year. So there's a pretty stark difference in what those two electorates look like. You could look at it kind of two different ways. One is, 2020 was when District 5's up. 24 will look, 24 is going to look similar. You could predict that, obviously. Or you could say 2022 is more recent, and that's the trend and all that, right? And I think those are two kind of reasonable points of view. Something from the case law that I want to repeat that's on the bottom of the third paragraph of the memo is that no single statistic provides courts with a shortcut to determine whether a set of single-member districts unlawfully dilutes minority voting strength. So I think the one thing that that's pretty clear from the way the courts analyze this and would look at this question if it ended up in court, is that you shouldn't just look at one thing. I think that maybe an average of the two would be more informative. We don't know whether, and we have to keep in mind that this is a map for the entire decade or maybe even longer. Hopefully, we won't have to do this anytime soon again. And that it'll, endure for a couple decades or maybe even longer. So you're not just looking at 24, you're looking at 28 and 32 and beyond. So the more conservative approach, the more cautious approach would be to not just look at one election in isolation, not just look at 2020 and say that's probably enough and, being within 2% of the number that we came up with in our analysis will be sufficient, but looking at a blend. If you take that approach, which would be my advice, you'll end up something like, I think this new map is definitely an improvement toward Voting Rights Act compliance over the initial draft from last week. I still think that trimming some of the territory outside the city in Precinct 9 or the additional area of District 5 that's added from District 2 and adding folks that are currently in District 1 or in District 2 in the city of Perry would be more toward that blended average of the two elections. That's kind of my take. The otherwise, I don't disagree with anything Mr. Dudley said, and it's we're all using the same data, and we all figured out what errors there are in it too. So we're all working from the same kind of menu of how we're kind of answering the question. I will say, I think that's pretty much all I have to say right now about. One other thing. Another dynamic kind of layered on top of this is the overall arching trend, which is kind of unavoidable or undeniable, which is that Black population of Taylor County and Perry is declining and will probably continue to do so. And I know there may be some major shifts, hopefully not, in population of the county overall in the next several years. But I think kind of the general trend, as Commissioner Demps pointed out, when District 5 was originally drawn in 1983, it was at 59% Black by registration. Now it's under 50. I think that will continue. So if we're thinking about a district that we hopefully don't want to come back here and be making more major alterations to 10 or 20 years from now, the more cautious and conservative approach would be would be to have the black electorate be a little bit higher than, or maybe more than 2 points higher than the bare minimum number. The last thing I'll say is that 47 to 48% black share of the electorate number that is our effectiveness number, that's taking into account a range of more than 10 elections run in the county. So that I have a fair amount of confidence that that's what courts would find would be the effectiveness threshold for black voters succeeding. But that's kind of an average of what gets you 50% plus one in an election. So that's kind of your, how to put it, like your usually meet the bare minimum number. I think that's good enough. I don't think that's good enough. That's what courts find is good enough. My opinion doesn't really matter. But that's another thing to look at when you're saying, are we going to take a more conservative approach, a more cautious approach, or say we're just going to look at this one election. So that's kind of my take on the whole thing. Yes.
So my question, I still don't think you got an answer to the question. It's just really yes or no. Does the map that Mr. Bedully provided, the changes, does it meet requirements?
I would say no. And I would say that there's not a whole lot that would need to change to kind of meet that blended approach, to get it over the threshold, but there still need to be some changes.
In detail, what about that map does not meet the ACLU requirements?
Yeah, so again, if you were to take the kind of blended approach, just looking at an average of the black turnout in 2020 and in 2022 averaged out, that's about 46%. So getting that up to 47 or 48% would be what I would say would meet the bare minimum of compliance. That would be a defensible position in my view.
Just if I might comment, because I will say it again, I appreciate your technical memorandum, because I think it helped narrow the focus on what we're actually supposed to be trying to achieve in order to get a compliant map, which I believe we have, in that you are suggesting that it's more appropriate to include 2020 and 2022 elections for determining the black voter participation. We're talking about District 5. In fact, your technical memorandum begins its context of District 5. District 5 didn't have a participating election in 2022. Why would I water down and dilute the results from that when it had no bearing on their ability to elect the candidate of their choice in District 5?
Because we don't know whether 2024 and 2032 and 2028, skip one, will look more like one statewide election versus another statewide election. We could go back to 2016, we could go back, the further you go back, the less relevant it is just because it's history. But that's why.
I don't disagree going forward that the relevant elections would be appropriate to check, such as 2024, 2028, the ones that have participation for District 5. But the intermediate ones, the 2022s, the 2026s, those have no bearing on District 5's participation relative to a district level decided vote. I'm sorry, I'm an engineer and I'm missing this, so.
Yeah, I mean, they're both statewide elections that had countywide races in Taylor County.
Statewide has no bearing on where you're living at in a district.
But I get that, but District 5 is on the ballot under, the statewide races.
Not in
too,
2022.
When the governor, sorry.
The district doesn't run.
No, I understand, but when District 5 is on the ballot, it's in a statewide election.
It's 2024. It's in the presidential, but not in the odd years, as he's saying. So I agree with you. Why would you dilute the information?
Again, I'm saying, because we can't predict whether, it's.
But you're missing the fact that you're not, I don't know that you're missing it, but you're just ignoring the fact that these people do not run during that election that you're wanting to claim. They're not on the ballot.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Nobody's running in District 5 during those years.
I understand.
Right, but there are elections going on in 2020.
So to me, what I took from you looking at the 2022 elections was because that was the last election. 2022 was the last election. It wasn't an election where a District 5 person would be on the ballot, but it was the last time that there was an election and there was voter participation in an election. So to me, that's why I took the relevance of us looking at 2022. Now, as far as District 5, and I mean, it seemed like there's a lot of focus on District 5, and I hope that focus is for the right reason. So my concern is, if I must say, my name is Deidre Donnell. I live in Coral Point Johnson Drive, if I need to put myself on the record. I have attended every meeting that the county commissioners scheduled in regards to redistricting. I was gonna come to the initial one in August, but it got canceled because of the storm. But I was here in September, I was here in October. I was to all of them except the one that was canceled on the 28th, and that was because I was under the impression that we was getting a joint meeting with the school board. Now, in every one of those meetings, the only map that was presented was a concept map by ACLU. I was not aware that the county would be having an engineer look at a map or anything like that. I wish that information would have been made available so I could sooner, engage in that part, because like I said, the only thing that I was privy to be aware of is that you guys was discussing redistricting and you was working with the information. Now, again, when Mr. Dudley presented us with the map on the 11th, it was hard to look at that map because it was signed in a PDF. So I have not had opportunity, just as the map that was signed by Ms. Pemberton on the 15th, it was PDF. It's really hard to zoom in and really look at it to see, how it, even now with him presenting it, it was still hard to look at it because it's like I'm looking at census blocks, and that's, a little high for me when I'm used to looking at streets when I'm out campaigning or whatever. So I looked at the maps that Mr. Warren sent out on the 15th, and you could zoom in on them. I mean, the 3 maps that he showed, it didn't seem like there was a huge difference in those maps, other than like a portion that was added in or whatever. But even in looking at those maps, it was concerning, but it was not concerning because, again, like even when you just highlighted the information that was put up there, when you looking at the minority voters, it looked like there are more in the city than in the county. And that's what my concern is with the county map. It seemed like it's looking at the county versus, like I say, where the voters are located. So that's what my concern is. I know that the community that has engaged this, again, it's looked like they was looking at the ACLU map. Again, I understand that was a concept map. I understand that when Mr. Warren proposed that, he was just showing us as a county this could be done. He didn't say we had to choose that map, but that is what has been more privy to the public than the county, what the county is presenting. So that's a concern for me. I'm not saying that I'm completely against it. I just would like, everything to be taken in consideration because, again, unless we could come back and do this in 10 years, which we're actually in almost 4 of those years because that's when the census comes every round. My concern is that we do the maps where it will benefit us in the long run versus bring us right back here. So that's my concern.
Just so I understand. So whether you look at concept A or B, and maybe even C. So A and B, the percentage of registered voters, the black percentage is 55%. And so I think what you're stating is it would be preferable to have that additional 5% now, correct?
Yeah,
Is that what
I think that how I would phrase it is that it would be a more conservative, cautious approach to ensuring compliance by having that additional buffer. Yeah, one other thing I'd say on 2022 not being relevant at all, I think Ms. Donnell kind of said better than I did. why I think that that's relevant. I don't think it's dispositive. I don't think that's the only thing you should look at, and I probably would have included 2020 if I extended into some longer page than legal size, which I had to do to get the charts all on one page. But it is relevant because that's the most recent election run in the county. And as just an example, a case that we worked on last year in the city of Jacksonville, which was over at city council districts, that those city elections are actually in odd years by themselves in the middle of March in odd years. There's no other elections on the ballot except for Jacksonville. But the court still looked at how folks voted in presidential elections, in gubernatorial elections, and in other countywide, statewide races that weren't even run at the same time as any city elections. So it's all thrown in the pot because they're all elections that are run in that jurisdiction. That's kind of the thing. And 2022, in my mind, is kind of special relevance just because it's the most recent elections we've had. But again, I think this time I'll
Does that, I'm sorry.
Just historically in Taylor County, on the elections that are the presidential, there, you can ask our supervisor of elections, we have many more turnout to vote on those years than we do on those, what we call off years. So it just seems like to me, that would be the most relevant data because you've got the biggest turnout.
Yeah.
And why is it not?
Yeah, I think it's obviously relevant, right? I'm just saying that 2022, the most recent election run in the county, is also relevant. I'm not saying we should just look at that, but that's why I think a blend of the two, or taking them both into consideration, is again a more cautious approach to ensuring compliance than just looking at 2020 in isolation.
So you think it's a more cautious approach, but it doesn't also present a little bit of greater danger to have an inaccurate data set?
Not if your goal is to comply with the Voting Rights Act. I mean,
It's everybody's goal.
Yeah.
So the question is, by including the data set that doesn't have a higher percentage or a higher turnout, don't you think that presents a risk of greater potential for inaccuracy?
No, I don't really see it that way, because when the question is, will this given configuration of District 5, meet the threshold to usually perform for black voters preferred candidates? And we know that's, judging by one election that's true, and then judging by a second election that's also true, then that's kind of check yes to both.
Right. So to you then, it's more of a priority to be inclusive of the latest election, even though you know that it's likely not to have a higher probability of those folks turning out.
I wouldn't put it that way either. I just say that
But isn't that really what we're talking?
No,
Because we know that the folks in District 5 and those individuals don't have a representative on that ballot. So that's, I think, why the focus was, there is a representative on that ballot in 2020. It's an election year when there's going to be a greater turnout. So we don't want to skew the information by knowingly putting that risk into the data set.
So again, I just say that the fact that the most recent election was run in Taylor County, it was in 22, and District 5 wasn't on the ballot, doesn't negate the fact that that was the most recent election run in the county, and that's a relevant consideration to see, what future elections might bring to, even in 30 years.
Is that just your opinion, or is it based on statistics?
No, again,
It sounds like it's your personal opinion.
No, ma'am. Again, I would point, I think a great example is the Jacksonville case that I just discussed, where the federal judge was analyzing, predicting how elections would go in city council races that are in March of odd years, but was looking to predict that at the presidential race and the gubernatorial race from last year and the other cabinet offices that were on the ballot
That
last
just
year.
doesn't make sense to me, but maybe I'm just not quite getting it.
Well, I think it's a more holistic thing rather than, 2020 was at this point 4 years, 3.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago, more than 3 years ago. What year is it? What month is it? So that was a while ago, and it was just one race, and that the kind of more, like I can go back to that quote that I'm not going to read again about not just using one single
But
statistic.
did you use 16 during the presidential, why not use that one too?
Because I'd have to ask my data analyst to pull those numbers, but yes, I think that.
That would be important to have that data from you look at 16, 18, 20, and 22. I mean,
Yeah, I think,
those years, the presidential, years is when, to me, it seems like it would be the most correct information, because most everybody wants to vote in.
Okay. But I want to say, maybe we need to go back to 1983 when this was done, when it was set. You know, you go all the way and check the track record all the way back. But, let you know this, when the city was settled, I was in Tallahassee with David Littman and Bill Newman when we settled the lawsuit. I was not on the lawsuit, but I was on the city council. And I knew what Mr. Littman said and what the city had sent. They wanted to be above, that they could elect two, according to the city population, it's 48%. They wanted the districts separated so they could be sure that they would elect two minority representatives. Now, there was 48% black population, we had no problem. Even to the one with one population in the county, if it was 58% or 59%, then we have 50% now. Somewhere down the line, we need to get 5 or 6 more percent. It doesn't have to be 90. The rest of them are 90%. And all we asking for is 55 or 56 or 57. What's the problem? Move those lines where you need to move them and achieve what you need to achieve.
Yes, Mike Albritton, District 5. I live at Howard Road. And I hear y'all talking about my vote don't count but once every 4 years, because every off year I'm gonna vote for a county commissioner or a school board member. And that's insulting. My vote and everybody else's in District 5 should count every time we vote. Don't sit there and tell us it don't matter because we didn't vote for a commissioner in 2 years in an election. It should be considered every time we vote. And what y'all talking about is silly and wrong.
In regards to 2022, can I just say one more time? On the 2022 ballot, you do have local races, but you also have constitutional as far as congressional. So I can see the relevance of going with 2022 as the last election that was first highlighted, because as Mr. Albritton just said, I don't just vote when I'm on the ballot. I do vote in that off year, because I vote for Congress representatives, and I also like to vote for governor. Now, I can't vote for the commissioner races because it's single member district. So I can see why the relevance again was for the 2022, because it was the last time there was a general or a primary election, because again, you had people that was running for office. So when I looked at that, I didn't see that he was highlighting one particular election over another in regards to black votes. I just think that, like I say, to me, when I looked at it, it seemed like he was just looking at the last results of an election that took place in his county. So I hope we don't get caught up with whether, the black vote was stronger in one general election versus another. I just hope the focus would be on, again, that we have to redraw these maps. And these maps, again, need to be drawn in the best interest of the community as a whole. Because again, it was 40 years ago that it allowed us to arrive where we at now, where we do have minorities on the ballots. I would have hoped in 40 years it would have been more than just minorities running in a predominantly minority district that would offer that advantage. It seemed like based off the law has allowed that to happen. But again, in this communities, it's just how far we've gotten. So again, I would like for us, when we're looking at these maps, that we don't just take in consideration of, us sticking primarily with what we at when we see our population is declining. I hope it will allow us to look at long-term as far out as we can look. We can't look at an election that has not occurred, but we can look at the last election. And like I said, we can look at those that have occurred and go with that data and see what we can produce as far as producing a map that will not only allow us to vote in this next election, but the ones to come. And again, vote candidates that could represent our community as a whole, not just look at one district producing it.
with it. And, Pam District, right?
Yes.
So my concern is, I'm dealing with numbers a lot. If we don't do what Commissioner Dent is talking about, make a shift to include, get up to the 55, 57%. I remember I was working with Bellarmine with the Lippman Hospital, I was in college then, that the population that is not registered right now in that district where they're extended, or where it's located up a proposal, say if we have 4% white increase, I said they're gonna vote one way or the other, but the likelihood that that percentage increase another way, that black percentage of that count is just gone. It'll take us down to about 46% instead of meeting the objective of the ACU, right? So we on a wing and a prayer. I don't understand why we can't do what Commissioner Dent is saying and not look at this bare minimum and what's the problem by moving it a little one way or the other, where a lot of, where more blacks are registered to increase that percentage. I'm kind of lost there as well. Because again, you can have a candidate or someone go out and register as voters, and what is the population versus black, minority, and whites that not registered in that area? Does anybody know? Currently not registered. Because I'm a candidate, and I want to target a certain demographic. I'm gonna go find that group is not registered. That's what they do on campus every day. Hey, I need you to register. I need you to register. And it's easy to get 1 or 2%. And I get that 1 or 2%. Now that percentage that we talking about going to court, what the court is talking about, that percentage decreases again. So we don't do like Ms. Donnell and he's saying is, we right back in court again. Why can't we capture more than enough?
We can do it for
In that area.
like we've done before.
And being that again, that all other areas in the 90%. I'm lost and puzzled with that. And I'm really concerned about what's the demographics of the people that are currently not registered. And as we know how the housing market and the rent and everything is going now, and all the things you have to do to register to vote with your address and things, by the time you make all those corrections with people moving around Perry, teenagers, now they're not 18, they're 22, they have their own place, they'll move somewhere else. So that demographic is easily adjusted by a couple of new registered voters. So that's a really concern for me. And I'm still trying to understand, anybody know the demographic number?
There's 70% that's registered to vote in the district boundary that we drew.
What's the different demographics of the racial divide of the ones that are not registered?
I don't know. I'd have to
So
I only did it for
that's a number I think we need to look at to make sure that if that number increases one way or the other, that we kind of still stay with that 50%. What's the minimum you said?
This was 48%.
48, but really we need to be looking at 50, 55 or higher, in my opinion. But making sure we reach that number and higher, because that 30% left is what we need to be looking at. Where we drawing those lines to make sure if 5 to 10% of those decide to register and vote, where will we be?
Actually, that 30% there, that's all other people. I don't have the statistics, and maybe he does, on legal age, legal voting age, not registered individuals. I don't know that number.
So what is
The
that?
30% I gave you,
What's the other people? What is that?
young people that aren't of legal age,
Okay,
or those that can't register to vote.
so are you saying that,
It should be less than that 30% of the target audience is what you're after, who are of legal age and able to register to vote is what you're asking, I think.
okay, what I'm asking is the ones that are eligible to vote
Yes, sir.
and eligible to register to vote, but is not registered.
Right, it'd be less than that 30%.
How far though? I mean, 5%, 10%, do we know?
I have no idea.
So that's the percentage I'm talking about. That's
We only have the data of those who have registered to vote. You can do the reverse, and I guess you could do the census population of those individuals who are younger than age 18, but it'd be pretty.
Well, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
If I get that, say it's not 30, so just give it 15% of those are teenagers can't vote, or too young. The other 15%, what if they register to vote?
Absolutely.
Right.
And I don't know the racial divide.
You see what I'm saying? If they register to vote, then with the small target that we are now, with the minimum, we're at the minimum. It just take a few of those 15% to register and vote, and then we in compliance again.
I don't disagree with what you're saying, and that's why we are not at the minimum. We're actually 2% ahead of that minimum.
Okay.
But what I think is, what's lost here is that the ACLU, in that memorandum that they provided, they've done that analysis, and what they have determined is, obviously a census is a snapshot. So you have to make a decision at that point in time based on the relevant data. They have determined that 47 to 48% single race black voter turnout is the magic number to ensure that there is an ability to elect a candidate of their choice.
Right.
If we have achieved that and more, then I'm just baffled that someone can stand up there and say that the map we propose is non-compliant.
Okay, so right where you're saying,
Yes, sir.
right? The 47% or 48%.
We're at 50.
Okay, so, but as we talked, the other 30%, maybe, even say 10% of that 30% is a demographic, non-black, that go register to vote. Or somehow, this year, since so much going on, they go register to vote. And then they go vote. That's 10% that you take half of that 10% away from that 48 or 50%, you left at 45%. So what I'm just saying is,
I understand everything you're saying.
we just dealing with bare minimum. Or 2% is nothing.
I don't know that you could get to a percentage that would give you the ability to overcome those currently legal to register to vote not having registered to vote.
Okay, so I'm not trying to get totally there. What I'm trying to get to a comfortable percentage that would say maybe 5%, like Mr. Johnson was saying, that if we got around 57 or 55%, which is only about 6% of the 15%, or half of the 30%, if we get there, it's more comfortable. It seems like there's a more community approach that make things fair. Because we definitely want to go back where we were before.
And all I'm suggesting is that we relied on the ACLU to provide the legal position on what that magic number is. We met it, we exceeded it, so that we would be compliant with those requirements, so that we would not necessarily have to go through this exchange. There is hypotheticals that we can throw all out. There is a legitimate possibility that non-registered voters could register and sway the results. That's always true. But what they have found is they have to get, at some point, to make a decision. And that decision is, they have decided, based on the analysis, you must have at least 47 to 48. If we do that, then we've met that obligation.
As a citizen in this community, I am disturbed on
how we're associated with bare minimum, right? Like you said, look at everybody else's area, nobody else is up here fighting for a percentage, because they 90. Right? You're not fighting, nobody else is fighting for all those areas. We in here trying to make sure we don't go back where we were before, where we don't have a voice in nothing, right? And dealing with those numbers you're talking about, I'm an engineer too, right? I'm a computer engineer. So I'm like you to deal with numbers all day, right? You know what as I know, just like you said, it don't take for that number to flicker. All I'm trying to get is more fairness, even if we don't get back to 59. But now we're sitting when voting time comes, we're sitting here saying, I don't want to get in pointing fingers, but like election we had recently that went into a runoff that no one expected. But those, from the information I have, those write-ins from up the road was a factor to elect someone into a position. And just like those, we're talking about a percentage of people that may move in that area, may have already moved and we don't know yet, or may decide when someone go out campaigning that they decide to go register to vote, and just the flicker, the straddle of that line takes us back, or takes us in a place where we're not complying. That's all. I see what you're saying. You're saying that you they met the requirements of what they're saying based on what they're saying. But as we talking here today, you, all of us, it seemed like it's not going to take much for that to waver and we're right back in here.
I will only point you back to his memorandum, and it wasn't portrayed as being, this is the bare minimum that you need to get. They actually described it as, this is, based on their analysis, with a high degree of confidence, what level is necessary. So it's not that they are saying, well, we kind of think it might. It is a lot of certainty that they are suggesting anywhere between 47 and 48% of minority black, or single race black, voter turnout in a particular district will be able to elect the candidate of their choice. We met that high degree of confidence plus.
But no, I don't agree with the plus. And that's not what your map's showing, and that's not what he got up here and said a few minutes ago that, the question, do you think are we there? He said no.
And there's a difference between having met an objective and having met a preference. Because he does prefer, as he stated, and please don't let me misstate, that he would prefer a larger margin, some of the numbers that he was supporting. That doesn't answer the question of, does this result meet the objective stated in that memorandum? Because they do.
But I'm still going back to, I'm uncomfortable, like Commissioner Kemp said, the question, no one has answered this question. Why can't we target and look at and include more? No one has answered the question.
I think, if I could, I think Mr. Warren did answer that question, because I
He didn't
asked
say why
him-
not, why we can't.
No, if I'm not mistaken, of the proposals that you sent out, there are two versions that are 55. When you look at registered voters in 2023, there are two versions where in District 5, the black percentage is 55%, but none any higher than that. Correct?
That's correct.
That's the highest. And so that's an additional 5%. So I don't think it's 58%.
Not included in that.
And it doesn't.
So are you saying now that it's not 48, it is 55? Is that what you're saying?
No, sir.
So
The highest voter, highest, for District 5, the highest you could get the black voter registration share of that district would be about 55%.
About 55, okay, so.
That's all I'm saying,
So we're
right.
48, so don't worry about 59. So why can't we get closer to the 55?
I didn't say, that's why I asked Mr. Warren, what is which
Okay.
version of the map is that attainable? So there are two versions, correct?
So it is attainable.
But Mr. Dunwoody, even with his 55%, he only has that 48% voter turnout. We have a 50% population that apparently is a little more responsible and actually turned out a 50% voter turnout.
Okay, still, the question goes back to what Mr. Dent was saying. And the saying is that, where can we increase the map, redo the lines that get us more than the 48%?
My guess is if the district lines that we have drawn migrate towards Mr. Warren's, inevitably the numbers are going to necessarily migrate to the same people. So we bracketed what I think the possibilities are, in that he's showing a 55% registered voter population with a 48% single race black turnout. We have shown you a 50% registered voter participation with a 50% voter turnout.
2%.
We exceed his.
So, about 2%. And I'm saying, I'm still thinking about the one we talked about, 30%, they say it's just 0.5%. So basically, are you saying there's no way to increase that anymore?
I'm sure that there is a way to tweak these numbers a hair more. What I tried to show when I displayed those dots is there's not this one big cluster that's sitting there that we can grab. You actually have to move across. And I even thought about going north of Main Street all the way up to Ash Street. But when you do that and you turn the population on of what are single race black voters versus single race white voters, you get an overwhelming majority of single race white voters to where it's only going to decrease my overall percentage. I did look at that all the way around the fringes to try to maximize my black voter participation in that election. And you can't easily achieve it without diluting it with white voter participation in those same elections.
Well, I'm not denying that you didn't do what you're supposed to do. I want you to take it that way. But I am concerned, like Mr. Dent said, again, and I'm getting out of it now, that you are saying basically you're done with all you can do. Is that the case?
I put a pretty good effort towards it, yes, sir.
So there's nothing else you can do.
No, I won't say that, because I probably can grab, each individual census block and try to make the numbers move. Will it move drastically? I don't think so.
Okay, and I don't think we asked for drastically, right? So
5% is a lot.
Well, you say you're already at 50%.
Yes, sir.
Right? And you did 2%. So if the average their action was about 48%, you did 2. So why can't we just get 52%?
And even
make it 4%? That I'm saying it would have to be 59, but a little bit more cushion in there. So we not back here like Ms. Donnelly had a couple of people that said so in him, so we're not back here again in 4 years. That's all I'm asking.
And there has to be at some point a target and a decision made, because the target for me has been moving a lot. I need to finally have it decided, this is where it is, and if you do this, then we're good with it, because that keeps moving with me.
Yeah.
Brenda Cross, Taylor County School Board. And I mentioned this at the last meeting, but moving I'd like to know the impact on District 5 of moving the boundary from Holt Road to Courtney Grade.
But that's all I'm trying to get at. It's just hard for me to believe that we can't increase that a couple more percentage. I know you said, the population declines, I understand that. So that may not allow us to get to the 59 we were before several years ago. But we gotta do better than this 2% cushion. I'm just not comfortable with that. I don't think anybody else in this room is really.
Well, and that's what I was just trying to suggest, is that don't perceive it as it's only a 2% cushion when they're portraying that 47-48% voter turnout as a high degree. They're not saying this is the bare minimum. They're saying we have a high degree of confidence that if we achieve this, we shouldn't have any issues electing the candidate of our choice. We did that plus more. So we've already achieved a high degree of confidence plus put a cushion on it. Now you're suggesting that we take a high degree of confidence that has a cushion and put another cushion.
What was the history when we had 59%? Well, or do you know, what was the high percentage turnout?
I was probably like you, I was probably in high school.
I mean, but
I don't remember.
The history should be somewhere.
You're probably right. I remember the map, but I don't remember election results back then. I don't even know if I could get that, I guess.
Oh, I mean, we gotta look at that again. That 2% and with the people that's not registered, then other folks, people gonna get registered. And we gonna, I mean, it's gonna drop right away.
Have you seen a migration of our black population moving out too? You know what I mean?
Right, I was like, that makes up for the 50. Yeah, he said 59, so now we're talking like 50, 52, even 55, so it's 4%. We're not even talking about that we saying they probably moved out, right?
But as they move to other
Moved
districts,
to other places or
it makes it
whatever.
that much more difficult to get a higher percentage.
Right, and so we got that, so still my question comes down is, it can't be all we can do. And he's asking, can't we just include several percentage more? And I think we need to look at that. That's just my opinion. Got one right here.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The Board of County Commissioners. Good evening to the citizens of Taylor County.
Good evening.
My name is Pat Patterson. I live at 333 First Street in Taylor, Florida. I've been here in Taylor County for 69 years. That's all I am. My grandmother, Louisa Britt, she influenced me in voting. The black people in Taylor County and around this country, we have come a long way. But going back to my grandmother, I remember her and her friends getting ready to go to vote. And they were so excited, very excited, because opportunity came forth for black people to go vote. And they had people to come around in the neighborhood to pick them up. Because my grandmother didn't have any transportation, and other blacks did not as well. And when I became eligible to vote, I was excited. Because I saw my grandmother, she got excited. They were calling one another, said, "Come on, Brent, you going? Let's go. Let's go vote. Come on. Let's go." And I stand before you here this evening. Number one, most of you know that I am a former county commissioner. But I stand before you here as a black woman concerned about her black children, future. The information I've heard here tonight are gathered about the past. The statistics is coming up from the past. We're looking to the future. I understand about numbers and figures. I too have a degree in finance. I understand about figures. But I'm concerned about, are we being fair? Are we concerned about Taylor County? Are we concerned about holding on to what we have? Are we concerned about holding on to District 5, District 4, District 3? Are we concerned about our little piece of the pie? That you're afraid to lose a little piece of your pie? These maps, somebody's going to lose a piece of their pie over to District 5 if you're going to be fair. We need to be fair. That's the key word, being fair. I realize you're saying 5% is not all of that. But to black people, 5% is a lot. All we want is not to go back where my grandmother was. We don't want to go back where my grandmother was. We want to go forward for our children. We realize that the population of the black people are declining. We realize that. But when I look at it, we're talking about people. Black, white people vote for black people. Black people vote for white people. So it's not about black. It's about vote, and be fair with it. So I'm going to ask you, and I heard it tonight, we need to move slow. Don't get in a hurry to vote on this map. Move slow. Move slow. Let's look at the line. Look at it close. We don't want to go back. We don't want to call Mr. Lipton. We don't want to call, no, we don't want to call Mr. Bishop. We don't want to call the lawyers in. We want to call one word in, that's being fair.
Mr. Warren.
I want to say something.
Okay.
George Clayton, 1003 East Green Street. I'm here because I'm a citizen of this county. I want whatever you present here will give the people in District 5 an opportunity to elect minorities. And I'm talking about black. I don't want you to present us something that looks good on paper, but in reality, it's something else.
Another concept he wanted to discuss with the board that they just refreshed them out if you'll.
I defer to you. I don't want to take up more time away from other folks. All right. This is just something that I made with using kind of the blended approach of looking at both of the most recent elections. And so this is based off of Mr. Dudley's map that he presented today. That's overlaid in these blue lines. And then what I just drew is the colors underneath. And if you zoom in the District 5 area, the major changes is bringing the border between District 2 back up where it was along the Fenn Holloway and Holt Road. So that's the old border there between the green and the yellow. Then between District 1 in blue and District 5 in yellow, bringing District 5 just 2 blocks north up to Leon from Maine, where it is in the staff draft as it exists. And then outside the city lines, coming down to 98 from the creek there over to the city limits. And then in the center of the city, District 5 gains territory from District 2, and that's bounded on the south by Church and Granger, and then on the east by Alvarez. So this ends up with the average voter turnout between the two elections at 48%. I think the turnout in 2022 is 52%, or somewhere around there, voter registration around 52%. And this is sort of my quick stab at something that looks kind of halfway between the two, with still a large chunk of District 5 in the county. Just wanted to throw this out for discussion. You all can discuss it or not discuss it, but since I came up with it, I'm sure.
So up there, I mean, I think I understand the lines up on the door up in District 1, is that going back up in the McKinley Maddox area?
No, he's dropped it back down to Highway 98.
He's, the blue line.
It's staying in the city limits.
It was
So
yellow.
I just mean the blue line that runs up into the.
That's the city limits.
That.
The blue line that's overlaid is Mr. Dudley's draft from today.
So you're going across Jefferson Street, this and the city limits at this point?
Yes, ma'am.
That is different from,
Yes,
from
ma'am.
Mr. Douglas.
All right, so you run, I got you, you lead.
Your district will extend down to Highway 98. It'll stay outside the city limits on the west side of 5. And then he is going up another block or two instead of Main Street. And then below 98, he is catching a few blocks in there. I thought I remembered looking at this and just thinking about some voter participation racial statistics. I'm not sure it worked,
Do
but
you know what the percentage on that would be? Would it be more than 52%?
I can probably make this a little easier.
What? Tell me.
In that, I don't think this is a large
Is all the yellow still?
difference from
You can turn off one.
what just scenarios that I've kind of looked at.
So-
Literally just the exact same thing.
So to give you the exact statistics, the vote for registered voters and turnout in the 2020 election, the black share is over 51%, so that'd be about 51.7 among voters who voted in the 2020 general. And then in 2022, that's down to 44% black, which is lower than the threshold, obviously, but the average of those two numbers is 48%. So anyway, I just wanted to.
Wait a minute, so what you just said was,
Two
that's a
percent
lower
less than
number
one.
he's got.
So no, 44 in 2022. So in Mr. Dudley's draft, that number is below, it's like around 30, or around 39 or 40 in his draft. 2022 voters.
Because he didn't,
Right.
you're like, so you're saying if we took the amount that he did, his one, the 22 was, what did you just say the 22 was?
In this one or Mr. Dudley?
Mr. Dudley.
Let me give you the exact number.
The primary or gen-
43%.
primary or general?
43%?
What you're saying would be 51.7% when you average the two.
The average is 48.
Or yeah, when you average the two elections.
Yes.
In your math.
Yes.
And Dudley's, you have, says you, what was it?
It is 46.
But what's the number of registered voters? Did I miss that part?
The
With
overall,
this concept?
overall number,
Yes.
like total number of registered voters in the district.
No, the percentage.
Uh,
to the two.
That is 51% black and 47% white.
And the yellow lines are, on this would be the new District 5 line.
Correct.
So how far up above Main Street did you go?
That's just 2 blocks to Leon.
I can't tell.
I think he said Leon.
And I think the concept is somewhat the same. I mean, Mr. Dudley, I know what Mr. Dudley probably done is he understands the dynamics of the districts. I think when he done his map, obviously he would, I mean, what I would do, he based it off of where District 5 and District 1, he based it off of the elections, the 2020, the upcoming 2024 elections where they are. And I think he probably, his main focus was on putting the black voters in that box and keeping the map pretty clean, I think. So that's where he come up with 50% voter turnout in those elections.
Really, the two differences in both of their data is one took one election and then the other took 2 elections. And when you get 2 elections from each one, this gives the percentage that he's looking for. 51.7.
Still kept, I mean, I know what he's doing around the El Dorado,
Rancho.
Rancho, that was probably a predominantly
It was, I captured that.
okay, so,
If you-
I mean, I think that was, I don't, I know your numbers is probably jumping up, when you put the two together, I think that when you go to reality of when the action happens, probably Mr. Dudley's plan is gonna, show more turnout, but I think to say You're pretty close to the same goal, you have to really. But I think, what Mr. Dudley has proposed, I think it does, I think it does meet the criteria overall, that meets criteria. I think he's shown that it's.
Oh, I see it.
So is that gonna mess up the actual number of voters in each district and will that keep that clean?
Yes, this is within the limits for the overall numbers.
Do you have in that the overlay of the actual georeference photos?
I just ran that, that's what I, not on Google Maps, but
Yeah, I wanted to see the dots.
I wish I knew how to put that on Google Maps.
Yeah, I'm obviously not opposed to looking at that configuration tomorrow, if that's your choice, to see if it meets percentage thresholds. I'm going to use the same criteria that I used for the current proposal, because that's the criteria that was espoused as being legally obligated.
Jeannie Mathis, School Board District 3, and I feel like we've done a lot of talking tonight, and I feel like we've done some spinning around, but because what we need, we have precedent, we have a court precedent where these cases have come for the Jacksonville one that you cited. So if we are not going to be in compliance in the end with the maps that we're looking at, we have to look at other maps. Because I'm not willing to go against the ACLU and what they recommend, personally. So, I mean, I feel like our map and their map have got to, like you said, blend together, and we have got to be in compliance. Or we've done nothing here if we end and we're not in compliance with our map. So,
I think both maps are the same goal, so.
I don't, Mr. Dudley, I got all confidence in you, you do the best you can. I got all confidence in ACL doing what they need to do. But the bottom line, when we leave here, I do not want to have to go before a federal judge until the federal judge, and let him make the decision. I do not want to have to go through a lawsuit. When we sit here, and everybody's at 90% except one little district, and we can't get above 52, that just does not make sense to me. Now, I don't know what we need to do and who we need to do it with, but there need to be a greater number than 50. Now, does that make sense? If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. But that's,
Well, this map right here is above 50%, right?
Voter registration, yes.
Okay,
voter
so
registration. If it's 5% or 50%.
this is 55%?
52%. This is
Okay, so
52%.
which one is it, version C?
A, B, and C.
Okay, so that was version C, this is version B. And this is at 55% registered voters.
Wanda, can you click off the one we just for those of the public can get a better view of it?
Yes.
There you go.
Okay. So this is version, to answer, I think I'm answering your question, Commissioner Dents.
Go ahead, try.
Or Mr. Warren, please. I feel like I'm speaking for you. Does this answer Commissioner Demp's question?
If the question is, can we get above 50 in A, B, and C, the voter registration in District 5 is 55%.
is that using when you said it's not just about voter registration?
Yeah. Yes.
It's voter turnout.
Yeah, so voter turnout in all three is also above 50%. And if you take the average, or if you look at 2020, for A, B, and C, they're all above 50%.
Is there data that would show, as Mr. Dunwoody proposed, African Americans that have not been included in the data that's up here? Because I know we're primarily looking at the previous elections and those that turn out, but he did make a very key point that you got a lot of people that are not being included, and the map's supposed to be based off the county as a whole, not just, that. I know that's the data that you guys looked at, but as he stated, I mean, you can in this next election, you probably see a strong voter turnout that you hadn't seen in the last two elections. So is there data that can show, the African-American population, not just based off voters, but in each one of these districts?
Yeah, so I'll give two answers to that. One is, for folks who may not have voted in either of the past two elections, but are registered to vote, that's reflected in the overall voter registration number. For folks who are not registered to vote at all, you would have to calculate that or estimate that by subtraction from taking the census count of adults and then subtracting who is registered. So that is possible to do. It's a little cumbersome, but that's how you would do that. And it would be an estimate.
So you're saying in that number you had, we talked about quarter, 50, that on the last two elections, that number includes African Americans that did not vote, that registered and did not vote?
No. So I think all the numbers we've been talking about tonight are either people who actually turned out or people who are everyone who's currently registered.
So, moving forward, any other comments from the board? Mr. Warren has a map presented that shows 55% and one at 52%. Mr. Dudley has a map at 50% based on 2020 and 2024 upcoming elections.
2020 election.
So I would, suggest we bring those three maps back. I mean, do we need to vote on it tonight?
I think, I'm not ready to vote on it tonight. I would rather study this one more.
Well, you can, under the statute, you can, 124.02, whenever you decide that the existing county commissioners' districts are from time to time changed by the Board of County Commissioners, it shall cause an accurate description of the boundaries, that's the maps, and of such districts has changed, and enter upon its minutes, certified copy of that, and you publish it for 2 consecutive weeks in the newspaper. And then after you do that, when they are changed, then you send it to the Department of State, certified copy of it pursuant to the statute. So at some point, if you're going to change the map and the districts, then you need to go ahead and at some point do it.
Yeah.
At some point do it.
Mr. Bishop, the deadline for that is February 9th. So as long as we send it, as long as it's voted on February 9th, we're in compliance, correct?
As long as you can vote on it and then have the 2 consecutive weeks that it runs in the newspaper.
But I think the notice can happen after February 9th, because
I couldn't hear you.
Sorry, I think the notice can happen after February 9th. It's just that the vote passage has to happen by then, but then the stuff that comes after.
I'm just reading the statute. And these cases too. If you want to go to sleep, read these cases. Wow.
So, I recommend we, go ahead.
I was listening.
I was just gonna say, if you wanted to vote on it, at the last possible time for a regular meeting would be February 5th, so you would need a decision made probably by the January 19th, so you could advertise it 2 weeks and have the hearing on the 5th.
I think we're at a point that we need to make a meeting. If we're not gonna do so tonight.
January 3rd?
January 2nd.
It's called Fisher Cut Bait.
Sorry?
It's called Fisher Cut Bait, right?
Right. So I suggest we bring the 3 maps. We got Mr. Dudley, he would have one at showing at 50%. Mr. Warren just presented one at 52% and another at 55%.
I think it's a total of 4 maps, correct?
Yeah.
4 maps?
From me, there's A, B, and C, and then the one that I just put up. Yeah, we'll call that D, I guess.
So there's actually 5 maps.
Do we have all I mean, does it have details to us on all of these maps as far as the line? And I saw the detail on this map and the, one showing at 55%. I really couldn't see, I mean, I pretty well know what this map, is just kind of preliminary, as to put up on the screen. Pretty well know what that is, but, you know, I'm not sure if everyone's ready to vote tonight. So I think we need to get some detail in everyone's hands so we can, I suggest, once this comes out next to everyone's emails, that we really study it. And let's be prepared to make a decision at the next meeting, because we've had a lot of meetings. I think we all understand what the goal is. So we need to just really study these maps and make a decision at our next meeting. Okay. So, all right. Well, we will move along. County staff items, 7, the board consider approval of standard grant agreement A4202 with State of Florida Department of Environmental Protection FERDAP program in the amount of $200,000 for continued development and improvement of the Taylor County Sports Complex. Melanie Cox, Travis.
Hey, everybody.
We hear you.
Hey, okay. As you know, we submitted the FERDAP grant back in 2022. It has taken this long to obtain the contract. The DEP has been short-staffed, and this is for continued improvements to Taylor County Sports Complex, including the construction of a new softball line. The grant is in the amount of $200,000, and the board approved a match of $200,000 for the amount that it takes to finish the scope of work.
Got it. Any questions from the board? Is there any motion to approve? Motion to approve, do you have a second? Motion, do we have a second to approve?
Second.
Have a second, all in favor? Aye. Hey, thank you, Melanie. Hold tight.
Thank you.
Hold tight. The board to consider approval of grant application for the Taylor County Coastal Trail.
We are requesting funding assistance for the Sun Trail in an amount of $3,453,000, no match from the county. As approved by the board, this is for the feasibility study, project development and environmental study, and preliminary design and engineering for the coastal trail, which will be from Pennell, the Pennell Trailhead, and will connect to the Sun Trail network, which will run along US 19 through Steinhatchee to Dark Island and connect to the existing paved trail that's already there that goes to Keaton Beach Coastal Park.
Got it. Any discussion, any questions from the board?
You got Stone Silver one that goes down 98 to what color?
The button's already.
That is still the priority project. We indicated it in our cover letter to FDOT because we had to require, we were required to certify what the priority was, so that is still the priority project for the county. This is secondary.
I move.
Do we have a second? Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you all, and very, very, very Merry Christmas to all of you. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. County Administrator items. 9, the board to consider approval of request to prepare grant applications to the Florida Division of Emergency Management for Hurricane Idalia Legislative Appropriation Program funding, presented by Solanda Pemberton, County Administrator.
So the legislature has approved a total of a $50 million legislative appropriation program in order to provide resources within counties declared by FEMA to fund projects related to Hurricane Idalia repair and recovery. And on review of the programs that are available, We would recommend that we prepare actually 2 grant applications to submit. The deadline is January 12th. We will be very busy for the next few weeks with all of these grant applications, but we would like to apply for funding for dredging of Keaton Beach Canal and Steenhatchee Boat Basin, since we have the permits in hand. That way we can preserve our Restore Act funding for other projects. And we would probably request around $2.5 million or somewhere around there for the actual dredging, and would be able to move forward with dredging quicker than submitting a grant application to Treasury and waiting a year for hopeful approval. We also have discussed submitting a grant application for permitting, design, and engineering for the remaining canals, the remaining projects. So that would be Eagle Beach, Dark Island, and Cedar Island. I don't think that we can actually accomplish all of that and dredging within the time period allowed, and I'm not sure we can get all of that done, but we would at least like approval from the board to create these grant applications, and we'll bring back to the board before submittal.
Could any of these funds be used to finish the cleanup from the storm? Because we've still got a mess.
Debris removal?
Yes. They're cleaning out culverts and creeks and things that's inhibited the water flow.
I don't believe so, but even if we could, that would be on a loan basis, that would be through a loan program, not a grant program.
A loan?
Yes.
I don't want to do a loan.
Yes, ma'am. That's why we didn't include that. Now, the only other maybe possibility, and I'm still waiting on an answer on the debris removal of non-county maintained roads. If, we can get the moon and stars aligned and get everything back, and I mean, if I learn that the state is not going to fund the debris removal of non-county maintained roads, and I could get some type of cost estimate, we could possibly submit an application for loan funding. And then as we receive FEMA reimbursement, the reimbursement would go to the state, but that would only be 75%. And I would much rather the state complete our request to actually perform the debris removal.
So tell me again why that some of this money can't be used for that? It's associated with Hurricane Idalia.
Well, I'm not saying it can't, but what I'm saying is that would be a loan. So it could.
This is not a loan right here, right?
No, it's different pots of money. Yes. So what we're asking for would actually be grant funding that we would receive up for this is considered infrastructure. So debris removal is in a different category.
Okay, so it has to be for infrastructure.
In order to receive grant funds. Yes.
And so dredging is infrastructure?
According to Department of Emergency Management, yes, it is.
So that doesn't make any sense to me, because if we're gonna clean out, ditches, streams that, have debris in it, I don't see where there's any difference in that than a canal having debris in it.
So
Probably the navigable waterway as being a mode of transportation.
So if you look in the information that we received from Department of Emergency Management, under infrastructure grants, it states examples in this category include several things: non-engineered beaches, dirt roads that are not maintained, or dredging of public waterways. And so that, and we did reach out to the Department of Emergency Management and described our situation, and we were encouraged to apply for the funds.
Okay, I guess
It's a lot.
I'm trying to put this to register, because if we've already got money set aside for dredging, and then we're gonna take that money and use it somewhere else, the only place it can be used is at the coast.
Correct.
I thought 25 miles up the coast.
Whereas this can be used somewhere besides the coast.
The reason I would encourage us to apply for these funds and preserve our Restore Act funds is mainly timing. Because if you recall, now that we've completed the permitting, design, and engineering at Keaton Beach and Steenhatchee Boat Basin, we would still have to go through the application process with Treasury, which takes about a year before we could even think about dredging. And so this would be a mechanism to hopefully move forward faster in those areas.
It would move it up, but is this the best use of the money? When we already have money for dredging? That's my only question. I'm not saying either way, I'm just asking the question. Is this the best use of this money versus the money that's already been allocated to do this job? Even though it'll take a little bit longer.
We don't have to apply for it, no. We can wait.
If it's available to us, of course we should apply for it.
I would assume so, only because and if you're asking if we can use it for debris removal in creeks.
Well, no, I understand that, you've already, I get that, but what you say about dirt roads, what does it say there?
It says dirt roads that are not maintained.
So what does that mean?
That would mean dirt roads that are not maintained by the county. I'm not even sure what we could do to those dirt roads.
Yeah, that's what, I just wanna make sure that, I just wanna make sure before I vote that I understand and that I feel like that we're using that to the best use instead of, okay, we can get this, we've got the money for this, but we can just do it faster by using this money versus if we can do something to improve a dirt road that we don't have money earmarked for.
That I'm not sure of because I can check on that and see if you're, if your concept is improving dirt roads.
Well, whatever that means, I don't know what it means, you don't either, obviously.
Mr. Chairman, I got a motion on the floor. I'd like to move forward in preparing these grants. If we don't seek out the funding to eradicate the problems that we already know we have, then they're not gonna get prepared. And we're not gonna have the time, and I'm prepared to move forward, and my motion is to prepare the applications.
Mr. Chair, I think I have all rights to try to get a good understanding of where we're going. I understand there's a motion on the floor, but I think as a commissioner, I have a right to understand and ask questions. So you could find out more in detail what this would entail?
I will reach out to, if it.
I'm prepared to move forward.
What
I'd like to have a vote.
You can do what?
I could reach out to Department of Emergency Management and see if I can get a better idea of what any improvement of non-county maintained. If that's only repair because of the storm, then I can get an idea of exactly what that entails.
Or whatever else that this would cover. Now, is time of the essence here?
Yes.
So until when? Do we have time for you to do that and get back and we can still vote whatever way we're gonna go?
I think what we would have to do is try to make the best decision on a staff level of what we can prepare and have back to the board so you can vote on it before the January 12th deadline, which I think we only have one meeting.
We've got a meeting, we could vote on it then.
Yes, but we need time to prepare grant applications because if the board wishes for us to explore there's two applications that we've brought, that we've discussed, two potential applications. One is for dredging and one is for permitting, design, and engineering, which is a lot for our staff to get prepared and have ready for the board to vote January 2nd.
Okay, so I just want to say this. When staff comes to this board and you've already sort of made up your mind what you want to do. And that's kind of where we're at, but yet there's other options, and you don't know what those other options are. I would suggest that in the future, have all the information, because some of us are gonna ask questions. Instead of coming here and say, this is what we're going to do, which I think this is where you are, and maybe that is the best thing to do, I don't know. But as one commissioner, I'd like to know,
I understand.
you know, what
And
those
the,
options are.
and the information that we were provided was little more than what's in the packet. So we did discuss at the staff level what we thought that we would possibly be able to have approved. But I'm not quite sure as far as the non-county maintained road repair, what that entails, but I will ask.
But when y'all were having this, and I'm gonna finish, but when y'all were having this discussion, did anybody happen to look at that and say, well, I wonder what this is? Or did you just zero in on one thing?
No, I looked at the debris removal, and I made an assumption that as far as the non-county maintained roads, that it was strictly repair that would have been from the storm. But I don't know 100% that that's, you're right. I do, I do understand, and I understand what you're saying, and we will explore that, and if the board wishes, we can, we can at least get an explanation and see what we can accomplish in order to bring it to the board on January 2nd. Because I made an assumption that it would just be non-county maintained road repair possibly, because this is supposed to be related to the hurricane. I think we can make a connection between the additional silt and deposits in the canals after the storm. I'm not sure if we can make that type of connection as far as non-county maintained roads, but I will certainly take a look at it.
Well, I think both are important. I think the canals are important, but also on those roads that we're discussing, there are tax-paying people that live on those roads too, and I think that I don't want to not consider.
I understand.
I don't want to not, and just say, okay, we're just going to take care of the fishermen, and you people that live on these roads and travel them every day, that we didn't even think about you.
No, I understand what you're saying, and I did focus on the potential dredging, because that has come before the board, and I did say that we would look at it, and then this funding became available. So, but we will explore the other options as well.
That's what I would like.
All right, we do have a motion on the table here. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Vote, all in favor?
And then you want us to consider additional possibilities as far as what other uses that this money could be utilized for.
Yes. Yeah, and I think the motion was, you all had it spelled out of what, I mean, I don't know, is there gonna be enough, I don't think there's enough money, so. I mean, the grant is for so much money, so I mean, I don't, if that's the will of the motion, I mean, I guess the motion was.
The motion was to prepare the grant applications to request the funding for the dredging of Keaton Beach and Steinhatchee, and with the potential to extend it to all the maintained canal. Which I believe is what you were saying would be in order, and a possibility to move forward to go after and actually attain this designated funding. That's the motion. And it's in light of the folks that came up from Cedar Island that continue to have problems with their canals, the folks that are continuing to strike obstacles in the Steinhatchee River, the folks that are continuing to have problems in our waterways that obviously are coming in contact with navigational obstructions. And that's my effort. I'm not trying to prioritize that over our roads at all, but I don't have that kind of directive that say that we have roads in that same condition. I do that, folks, that came to this board that can't access that because of the silt, because of the obstructions, because of the hazards. And that's the reason for my motion, and I'll stand on it.
All right, well, I think we voted and pushed through, so you know the direction.
So I just think it's unfair not to consider the people that don't use the canals.
So wait. The motion, no, it was presented, and a motion was made, I think, based on what was presented.
It is to prepare the grant applications and request state funding as it was described.
I think it was voted on based on anything outside of that, all that, but it's just already been voted through on what was put out there. So, I just don't want to create more confusion. I mean, I think if we had a layout of what the grant application was.
Well, and so I do apologize that I didn't, my intent was not to leave anyone out.
I'm quite sure of that.
Right.
You know, and I'm sure you didn't anticipate anybody asking any questions about it, but the vote has been done. And the way I understand the vote is they don't want to see any other options. They want to go ahead with the canals, and that's the majority. Majority wins.
All right. The board to consider approval of the Taylor County Artificial Reconstruction Grant Agreement, FWC number 23053, and serve as fiscal agent, Jennifer County Administrator.
At the previous meeting, the board approved this contingent upon changes that the county attorney requested, which were, I think, specifically, had to do with venue and liability. So, yes, sir. So we
My letter
did.
didn't make it through.
Yes, the original letter?
It doesn't matter, that's exactly right. I really like to see my letters when you send me something that says, please review. I like for it to, show that I did what you asked.
And the last page of that item, Conrad, is your letter from December 11th. And prior to that are the emails between staff and FWC.
I didn't see that.
Yes,
I
sir.
went through that. I apologize, I'm wrong.
Well, no, but we didn't add your original letter, so, and we probably should have. However, FWC's position is that there is no room for changing the terms of section 29, which was the specific request from Mr. Bishop. And so, Mr. Bishop, would you like to speak to your stance?
No, if you want the money, you gotta sign. I told y'all that the last time. And I'm gonna put it in my letters, to make my clients aware that, that I think that the agreement should be changed. I had one of them say that, oh, if we change that one, then I have to change 66 other ones with other counties. They said that, it was in there.
But they're not gonna change it.
No, they're not gonna change it, but
We need the money.
you need the money, and you need I think you need, if you say you need the.
Motion to approve.
Yeah. I'm trying to say it as fast as I can.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? County Administrator to discuss informational items.
Just so the board's aware, we did receive notification that our rural infrastructure grant application for $300,000 for a feasibility study for the property in Steinhatchee was approved. We should be receiving a grant application at some point, but I certainly appreciate our staff. I know that Melody and Jamie and Kenneth have all worked very hard to, collaboratively to work on these grant applications. We have quite a few coming up. We have quick turnarounds, and I just appreciate the board's support and understanding if sometimes we do get in a hurry because of these type timelines. So I appreciate your working with us through those timelines. Thank you. That's all.
Did they give a quick turnaround so people won't apply for them?
Well.
Yes or no?
No, sir, I don't believe so.
Okay.
And sometimes it's a quick turnaround for us because if we don't receive a lot of information, and especially, we're still in hurricane recovery mode, we have, sometimes it just takes us a little
I
while.
always look for ulterior motives.
Well, the last I heard, there were only a couple of counties who had applied for the legislative appropriation program funding. And so I, of course, volunteered for, whatever was left to come to Taylor County, but I don't know that it will actually work out that way.
Hope so.
Thank you.
Well, comments and concerns from the public, non-agenda items. Anyone from the public? We'll move on, 13 board informational items, Commissioner Fegel.
Yeah, y'all know I mentioned a while back that I had a lot of comments from the public about this being a lot of money in the South End. I think this is what causes them to say that when we've got money allocated for the South End, and then we take other money and replace it with that, and then that money will still be spent in the South End, which is fine with me. But that's why people say that, is because it does look like that the money, a lot of money, more money is spent in the South End. Even though there's growth there, that's what a lot of people don't quite understand. Don't want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas.
Mr. Jennings.
I had a lot of talk about when will the debris removal be leaving town?
So the original date, was December 22nd, which is Friday. But as we are going through, releasing those zones for leaners and hangers and debris, I don't know if everyone's going to be able to stay on that timeline. I haven't heard any other deadline as of now, but I do know that there is still some work that needs to be done, and staff has had to be very involved in that effort. But Friday is supposed to be the final day.
What about the non-county main-owned road, maintained roads?
So I do not have any official action from the state, but I was told, that the survey has been completed, that the state emergency management, has completed the survey, and we're just waiting for some type of decision, which, makes it difficult for us to make any type of recommendation when we know there is a potential, funding available for a loan, and we have, it puts a lot of pressure on staff to know if we need to ask for funding for debris removal or not.
Okay, wishing everybody a Merry Christmas.
Mr. Newman.
Yes, sir. I'm continuing to get calls. Everybody got quite a rain event. I'm sure some of the things Mr. Moody talked about as far as drainage and flooding and all that's being tried out in multiple areas of the county. So I appreciate staff's attentiveness to that, and still working on that. I would just say in respect to comments made about funds and revenues, it's easy to have one-sided approach in respect to making off-the-cuff comments of something different when we actually see those revenues that are generated and how they're reinvested. So I'll be continuing the effort to see those reinvested in that fashion. And so the debris removal, do we know if that is the release of those zones? Is that meaning that they're going to be checked off as far as county maintained roads and the debris is going to be gone? Or are those folks going to be released because of the time deadline?
No, so actually, our Public Works Department is writing with the monitor.
I see.
We've still seen a lot of trees that are what we call leaners and hangers, that we have asked to be removed, so county staff won't be tasked with that. I do imagine there will be some conversations about when the deadline was to put the debris out versus, if it was put out after the deadline. So as we move through that process to release what are called the haul zones, we will have those conversations with DOT.
But you're expecting all the county maintained roads to have the debris that was out by November 30th removed, as well as the possible trees that,
Yes.
or things that may fall.
That is the goal.
Thank you, ma'am.
I've still got debris in my district, still sitting on county road that hasn't been picked up.
Yes.
And I'm sure they're aware of it, that they checked all the roads and looked at them, you know, and people ask me if we're gonna get it or not, and I tell them. So, I have to tell them that the date they put it out there, I told them that, they quit putting it out there, most of them. But, I told them, I said, I don't know if they'll pick it up or not. You know, there's something there.
Yes. And of course, we would love for them to pick up everything, every stick before they leave Taylor County. But I was informed today that the spend from FDOT in Taylor County has now surpassed $30 million. And I feel quite confident in saying that I think they would like to stop that project. I'm sure that they did not anticipate spending that type of money here. No, that was the original conversation, I believe, is that we did not want to spend that type of money.
What was the last number of loads they actually hauled, if y'all got that figure?
I don't have it by the load. The last time I checked, the cubic yards was over 1.7 million cubic yards, but I think it surpassed that if we're already at $30 million. It's probably close to 2 million cubic yards of vegetative debris.
Right.
So a lot of tree debris.
A lot of it. Merry Christmas, everybody. That's all I got.
So, are they really willing to move this from county maintained roads to private road pickup? We're going through, I think I understand, maybe a bid process?
I heard that there would be a request for proposals, but I haven't seen that yet. And I reached out to a neighboring county yesterday and asked their county manager, do you know something I don't know? And they were all kind of wondering where we are with the process. So I did reach out to my contact at Dr. Dunn's office, who's been very, very helpful with this, and ask her if she knew an update. Because I'm just not seeing the progress that I thought that I would see by now.
They're gonna let this equipment potentially demobilize, and then have to remobilize it.
Well, and they may use a different hauling company. They may use a different contractor. I know. I know.
Same 10 or 10 different ones.
I know.
Remobilize them.
I don't disagree at all.
An additional cost, so they really don't care if they spend $30 million.
Well, I think it's a different department that may accomplish this. I think, I don't believe FDOT is going to actually perform that on our behalf. It may be Department of Emergency Management, and they're going through their own process.
Is there a way that we could maybe get a deadline on when they will know, just if they're gonna pick up this private road? Because I mean, I've got.
I have asked numerous times.
I mean, I know you've asked, I know we have. There's some way that they can push on them to give us some kind of just that we will know, hey.
Well, that's what I asked for today.
By January the 5th, we'll have a decision by that date.
I will ask again if someone can provide that, but thus far, I have not received a deadline or any indication of when a decision will be made.
When you go to talk about private roads, then you can ask for driveways also. That would be listed different, right?
I don't think there will be any intention to remove debris from driveway. Commissioner Debs.
I think what it is on the private roads, on most of them are public roadways, even though they're private. If they're not gated and closed off, they're open to the public. If they're private because they haven't been deemed county maintained, so to speak. But, you know, as one of the leaders of this county, it really disturbs me that they come in here and they're unwilling to finish the job. Now, I didn't agree to somebody to come in here and say, okay, when we get to 30 million or when we get to December the 22nd, we're leaving regardless of whether we've got everything or not. That's not fair to us and our citizens. They should have been committed to come in and clean up whatever it took. Now, if nobody comes back in and helps us, we are left in a mess. A mess.
What's happened?
All of this debris is private debris. I don't care if it was put by the.
100% of this debris is generated on private property,
Come
yes.
off someone's private property, if the shed's blown down, or whatever. So, I mean, even if it's on a non-county maintained road, it's the same debris that they're picking up out there.
That's the argument I've had from day one.
There should be no,
I don't disagree.
Should be any different.
should be no pushback to not get the debris.
What's happened is the roadways, the county roads were so full in the ditches that a lot of people couldn't carry it out there and put it in the ditch.
That's right.
And it still piled up on their property, on their private road. There wasn't enough room to put it out there. And then about the time they got it cleared up in front of one of my constituents' place where he could carry it out there, the date come up, he couldn't put any more out there. So he's on a straight person, he didn't want to pile any more out there. But what throwed up the red flag with the whole group is people cleaning lots, taking a bulldozer and a front end loader and pushing a bunch of trees down that wasn't destroyed by the storm and pushing them out there to the edge of the road and putting it on them to haul them off. That's what's happened. And that's put a bad taste in their mouth, and I can understand that. You know, I've seen it with my own eyes. Man told me about it. Look, that wasn't in my district. It was in your district.
I got some from that, I got
And-
calls from down
and
there
they were
too.
Clearing lots. I mean, making nice clean lots out of them and putting everything, green tops and everything right out there in the ditch to be hauled off. And that really, it didn't look good. But there was no police of it, so that, I mean, they could do what they wanted to. Nobody was questioning what they were doing. And nobody was supposed to question them, I don't reckon. You know?
Well, I don't know. I think that the monitoring company has been disqualifying. If it is land clearing, they will mark those trees with a red X. And they have been adamant that they will not pick that up.
But they have, because of the people from Stan Hatcher that call you or the ones that call me, I reported that. And I gave them the address of where it was happening.
They did it 2 months late what they done. They did start putting extras on it or painting it, but it's 2 months late is what happened. You know, and that's what give everybody a bad taste in their mouth about debris removal. And I hate it because I got one neighbor down there below my house. He had a big metal barn and it loaded all up in a pile. He pushed it out to the edge of the road and it's still sitting there. And it's gonna have a torch out there, burn that up in pieces to even get it in one of them, to get it to haul it off. You couldn't haul the whole thing with the low boy and the crane at one time. And that's just, you know, but that storm folded it up in his yard and he pushed it out there with his tractor to the road and it piled up there in the ditch.
I got the same thing in my district this week. It was reported a barn, the same thing. And they put it out there. As a matter of fact, it's on your brother's road, Commissioner English, and I reported it, but I bet you between now and Friday, they don't go get it. And then who's?
They might, I hope they do.
Call you to come get it, your trailer. All right, I don't have anything else, just Merry Christmas and a happy Safe New Year to everyone. Gentleman back here did raise his hand.
Quick question about the Steinhatchee boat ramp. They picked up piles on the right of way all around it. They haven't touched the boat ramp. The inmates came out and they've got debris piles everywhere, including for the parking spot for the FWC officer. You can't park in there because he's got a pile of debris.
Is this where they've got a couple of maybe RVs and a bunch of tires stacked around it?
No, this is at the Steinhatchee boat ramp. It's the new boat ramp. There's debris everywhere down there. I mean, it's been piled up. They got debris off the right of way. They haven't touched the boat ramp, including, like I said, there's 2 spots for FWC. They can't use one of them because they got a debris pile this high.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
And the fences are all tore down. They're piled up too.
Got it. Thank you. All right, do we have a motion to adjourn? Motion and second.
So, next meeting is when?
January 2nd.
Day after New Year. That. Yeah. I know that's right.
Mind you.